Hey guys, tonight we wake up before the crows do. Picture this. The square is empty, veiled in a thin mist that clings to the cobblestones like an old memory. You rise slowly, still wrapped in the thick blanket that smells of smoke and damp wool. Your joints crack in protest, softly, carefully, as if even your body knows not to make noise at this hour. The medieval town is still asleep, but sleep isn't part of your life anymore. You're not a noble. You're not a tradesman. You're something worse. Or at least that's how they see you. You're the shadow behind the hood, the silent hand that sets the platform, sharpens the blade, tightens the rope. You're the executioner's assistant. The stains from yesterday's sentencing still cling to the stone beneath your bare feet. Even after scrubbing with vinegar and sand, blood leaves its own kind of ghost behind. The chill creeps up through your soles as you step out, and you try not to think about it. Your first act is to pull the hemp cloth off the toolkit. The canvas is damp with morning dew, the leather straps stiff with cold. Each tool rests in its place. Some are polished, some are stained. None are yours by choice, but all are yours by duty. No one speaks to you. You speak to no one. Last night, you slept in a tiny room behind the chapel, offered by a priest who pretends you don't exist. He grants you shelter, but not his eyes. You've learned the language of silence. Well, its judgment hides in every pause. A lone rooster crows. Even the others seem to avoid your hour. You light a fat candle made from sheep tallow and broken reeds. The smell is sour, the glow weak and yellow, but it's enough. You need to see what you're doing, where your hands go. A misstep means more than clumsiness. It means spectacle, shame, maybe worse. Your morning porridge simmers in a blackened tin pot. While it heats, you look out at the wood of the scaffold. It's swollen from last night's rain and speckled with flecks of dried crimson. It needs repairs, but no one will say that to the mayor, and the mayor will never say it to you. You chew the porridge slowly. There's no salt. You ran out 2 days ago. No one seems eager to sell you more. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is over there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You scrape the bowl clean with your finger, lick it, and pack everything into the same burlap satchel you've carried for years. There will be another execution today. You can feel it in the way the guards looked at you last night. Tight jaws, low voices, too many candles burning in the chapel. You lay the tools out one by one. Edge blade sharp, cleanup knife sharpened again. 2 hemp cords, each knotted precisely. A bucket of sawdust, vinegar, coarse salt, leather gloves, rags, wooden stakes, a shovel. The bag weighs the same as it always does, but it's not the weight of the tools that tires you. It's what they mean. Stepping out the back door, you pass beneath a carved stone statue of the Virgin. Her face is kind, distant, tilted just slightly down. You swear she looks disappointed, or maybe it's just your mind playing tricks again. Either way, you lower your eyes. In the square, a child flies a crooked kite. made from tattered cloth and twigs. She sees you, stops, and freezes. You smile genuinely. She drops the string and runs. You pretend that doesn't sting. Your job is not to feel, not to speak, not to exist. You kneel at the scaffold and begin to scrub with vinegar-soaked cloth. The stain is stubborn today. Perhaps the man was tense. Perhaps the blade dulled at the wrong moment. Or perhaps, just perhaps, that blood didn't want to go. You scrub harder. Up above, the bell hasn't rung yet. The town hasn't begun its day. But for you, it's already half over. Your name is not spoken, not by the guards, not by the townspeople, not even by you. It's there, of course, somewhere, scribbled once in a dusty church record, beside the word apprentice, but you haven't heard it aloud in years. And in this job, names become burdens. They make you visible. They make people remember, and your entire existence relies on being forgettable. You're called boy by the guards, that one by the bishop's men, it by the butcher's son who threw stones last summer. Your name isn't erased. It's worn down quietly, slowly, like footsteps on stone. After scrubbing the final plank, you rinse your hands in a basin left near the well. The water is freezing. You hold them there longer than needed, watching the ripples distort your reflection. Your face looks older than it should. No scars, no signs of violence, just tired eyes, hollowed by things seen too young and too often. There's no bell, no summoning, just routine. You return to the storeroom behind the chapel and retrieve your cloak. It's brown, threadbare, and smells faintly of iron. You tie it loosely. The morning sun is beginning to creep in over the rooftops, warming the stone paths. People will be out soon, setting up stalls, calling for bread, stretching their limbs in the soft light of survival. But you, as always, will keep to the side streets, the shadows. The marketplace is not a place for you. Once, years ago, you tried to buy dried figs from an old woman's cart. She handed you the pouch with shaking hands, muttered a prayer under her breath, then poured holy water on the coins after you left. You didn't go back. Now you leave coins anonymously, if at all, or trade through the baker's blind brother, who can't recognize your voice and doesn't ask questions. The others know what you are even if they never say it. It's in the way they don't meet your eyes, in how they step back half a pace when you walk past, in how mothers gently steer their children away from your shadow. You try not to take it personally. You know it's not really you they fear. It's what you represent. You carry death, even when you're only carrying onions. It's strange how deeply people believe in contamination, as if by brushing your sleeve, they might catch execution like a fever, as if the blade remembers every neck. Sometimes you wonder if they're right. There are days your hands feel too heavy, days when the axe seems to whisper, days when the wind carries sounds no one else hears. The last gasp, the gurgle, the wet snap, and yet the world keeps turning. The baker still bakes, the carpenter still hammers, and you, ghost among the living, continue your quiet orbit. You pause by the church gate. A crow watches you from the rooftop, black eyes glinting like polished obsidian. It doesn't fly away. Animals, it seems, are braver than people. You nod to it, and for a moment, just a moment, you wonder if this is your only friend. The morning crowd begins to swell. Merchants, apprentices, old women with baskets, boys chasing chickens. Their voices are loud, carefree. Someone plays a lute out of tune. Life pulses through the streets like a heartbeat. And yet, in the middle of it all, you feel like a ghost. A man bumps into you without looking. You apologize instinctively. He doesn't even turn around. You adjust your satchel, lower your hood a little, and slip into the alley near the tanner's yard. The air there is foul, thick with urine and ash, but it's familiar, safe. No one bothers you in the stink. The tanner's wife once said you were like smoke, always around, but never touched. You didn't know if she meant it kindly. You still don't. At the end of the alley, you pause. There's a splinter in your thumb from the scrubbing. You bite it out with your teeth and suck the blood without a flinch. It's only fitting, you think. Your blood for theirs. Your silence for their spectacle. Your name washed away. You didn't choose this path. Not really. It began with whispers, then a nod, then a quiet escort to the rear of a tavern that smelled of boiled barley and piss. That's where your uncle waited, your father's brother, though they hadn't spoken in a decade. You didn't know he was an executioner's assistant until that night. He didn't greet you. He didn't smile, just motioned to the crates stacked behind the tavern kitchen and said, "Sit." And that was your training. No ceremony, no oaths, no robes or rites. Just a man with a face like leather and hands like knots, showing you how to tie a slip knot with your eyes closed. That night, you held your first rope. It was heavier than you expected, and it burned your fingers when you pulled too fast. You bled. He didn't care. "You'll bleed more than this," he muttered, shoving a rag at you. "Best get used to it." Your lessons happened late at night, always out of view, in the muddy alley behind the tavern, next to the broken barrel with a rat nest inside. You practiced knots, wrist restraints, quick bindings, single pulls, double loops, one-handed tie-offs. Your uncle had names for each technique: the widow's cuff, the thief's lullaby, the double mercy. He never explained the origins. You never asked. Sometimes he'd pull out a turnip or a head of cabbage and practice positioning a blade. "Don't hack," he'd say. "Slice. Let the blade do the work. You're not killing. You're ending." You wanted to ask what the difference was, but your mouth stayed shut. Other nights, he'd test your reactions. Drop a wooden log in front of you without warning. You had to catch it before it hit the ground, or dodge a bucket of water aimed at your knees. "You'll need fast hands," he'd say, "not just to cut, but to clean up," because that was the part no one ever mentioned. The cleanup. Not just the blood or the rope, but the body, the teeth, the fingers that tensed at the end. Your job wasn't to end a life. It was to erase the evidence that it had been there. One night, your uncle brought out a pig's head and placed it on a stump. Try not to close your eyes. You did. The first time and the second. By the third swing, you forced them open. The eyes of the pig stared at you, lifeless but accusing. He made you do it again and again. "Clean strike," he muttered. "Your hands shouldn't shake. That shake will cost you later. You didn't sleep for 2 days after that. You threw up in the alley and tried to hide it. He didn't scold you, just handed you a cloth and said, "Don't ruin your boots. They're hard to come by." Eventually, your hands steadied. Your eyes stopped blinking. Your fingers tied knots in the dark without thinking. You learned which ropes snapped under pressure, which buckled. You learned to read people's fear by the twitch of their jaw or the color of their sweat. Once, your uncle asked you, "You afraid of ghosts?" You said, "No." He laughed, hard and long, the only time you ever heard him do it. "Good," he said, "because when you're done with this work, the living won't talk to you, so ghosts will be all you've got." You never forgot that. Years later, after his hands began to tremble and the ropes slipped from his grasp, he passed the satchel to you, the tools, the gloves, the vinegar flask. He left town quietly one night and never came back. Some say he drank himself to death. Others said the rope finally turned on him. You never asked. You just tightened the strap on the satchel and walked the same alley alone. Now, when the guards bring you a new apprentice, you don't smile either. You just point at the crate and say, "Sit." The bag is always the same. Canvas, frayed at the seams, heavy even when empty. It doesn't creak anymore. It groans, softly, like an old dog who's lived too long in bad weather. You've repaired the straps twice with butcher's twine and beeswax thread. No one offered to help. No one ever does. You lift it gently, adjusting the weight on your shoulder. It's a familiar burden. You no longer flinch when it bumps your hip, that dull thud of wood, metal, and fate. It's part of your gait now. Inside, a blade wrapped in cloth, 2 coils of hemp rope, a pouch of vinegar-soaked rags, 1 coarse whetstone, a worn pair of leather gloves, and your most precious tool, a folded linen cloth embroidered with 3 tiny red dots. Not blood, surprisingly, just ink. Your uncle marked it long ago, saying, "Use this only when it really matters." You haven't used it yet, but you keep it close, because one day something will go wrong, and you'll need something that carries luck, or at least the illusion of it. You walk slowly through the narrow lane behind the bakery. The smell of bread is warm, softening the edge of morning. You pass the flower boy, who turns his back as if by accident. You know better. Even the youngest learn early. Don't make eye contact with death's assistant. The street widens. You pass the apothecary. He doesn't look up, but you notice he's moved his amulets to the front of the stall again. Garlic bulbs, rosemary, sprigs, little sacks of dried sage. Superstition is alive and well in the marketplace. You, ironically, have none. You trust rope tension and blade balance more than charms. At the well, a merchant is drawing water. He stops when he sees you and quickly lets go of the bucket rope. It slaps the rim of the well, loud and awkward. You nod politely. He walks away. You lower your satchel gently onto the stone lip of the well and begin unpacking, slowly, with ritual. First, the ropes. You coil and uncoil them once to check for fraying. One knot has loosened slightly. You retie it. Then the gloves. You slip them on and flex your fingers. Leather like this is rare and expensive. You found them in the belongings of a man no one claimed after an execution. That was years ago. They fit well enough. The blade comes last. Still wrapped in cloth, it rests in your hands. With the weight of memory, you unwrap it like bread, slowly, reverently. The steel is old, pitted near the hilt, but the edge gleams. You touch it lightly with the pad of your thumb, sharp enough. For now, you run the whetstone across it anyway. Slow strokes, not for function, but rhythm. There's comfort in repetition, even in this. A shadow passes across the cobblestones. A woman in a blue shawl, carrying turnips, crosses to the other side of the lane without looking at you. She holds her basket tighter. You wonder what she thinks is in your bag. Poison? Chains? Pieces of people? You finish with the vinegar rags. The scent bites your nose, wakes you up. You use them to wipe the blade once, then your gloves, then the inside of the bag. It's not about hygiene. It's about the ritual. If you don't do things exactly this way, something might slip, and slipping in your line of work is not advised. You pack it all up again, slow and practiced. The bag is heavier now, though nothing has changed. Some mornings you imagine you're carrying every soul that's passed through your hands, every condemned man, every shaking limb, every final look. Some of them blinked, some didn't, some cried, some begged. One man just hummed, an old song about fish. Of all things, you still hear it sometimes. You hoist the bag again and tie the strap across your chest. A guard stands at the far end of the street. He doesn't wave. He just nods once, curt, like someone acknowledging smoke in the distance. That's your signal. Time to go. You walk past the baker's stall. He doesn't stop you, but he does place a fresh loaf out, just far enough from his reach that you can grab it without your hands ever touching his. You leave 2 coins. He doesn't pick them up until you're gone. At the edge of the square, a group of children are playing with sticks, pretending they're swords. When they see you, they freeze. One boy whispers something. The others scatter, except for one girl, maybe 7 or 8, who just stares. You nod to her. Soft, neutral, she doesn't nod back. Instead, she slowly lifts her wooden stick like a sword and points it at you. You smile a little, brave. But even the brave learn, eventually, to look away. You adjust the weight of the bag again. The straps creak. You keep walking because you're the one who carries what no one else will. It's not the work that hardens you. It's the pretending. Pretending not to hear the whispers as you pass. Pretending not to see the shopkeepers drawing protective signs in the dirt after you've gone. Pretending not to notice how the blacksmith's a dog who loves everyone, barks only at you. You learn quickly that invisibility is survival. If you're not seen, you're not blamed. If you're not blamed, you're not punished. So you walk with your eyes down, shoulders loose, face still, emotionless, not because you are, but because you must be. The key is to never flinch. Not when a man spits near your feet. Not when a priest looks through you like smoke. Not even when a child yells "killer" from behind a fence and his mother doesn't correct him. They want you to carry shame for them. That's the unspoken transaction. You take the burden of death. and they get to keep their illusion of purity. You do the work in the mud so they can sleep under clean sheets. But you've made peace with this, mostly. Sometimes, in the stillness between jobs, it hits you like a forgotten bell tolling in your chest. The weight of being hated by people you've never harmed. The strangeness of being feared more for your presence than your actions. After all, it's the other man who swings the axe. You just prepare the scene, scrub the stone, tie the knots. But that doesn't matter. You're part of the machinery. Guilt sticks to you by association. It clings like ash to a chimney sweep. Today, you walk past the weaver's daughter. She's hanging linens to dry and humming a soft tune. For a moment, she doesn't notice you. But then, the shadow of your bag crosses her feet, and she stiffens. The tune dies in her throat. She doesn't look up, just gathers the linens and turns toward the house. You keep walking, face still, heart quieter than it should be. At the tannery wall, you pause for a moment to adjust your strap. There's a smear of something foul. Blood, perhaps, or dye, along the bricks. You stare at it longer than needed. You think about asking the tanner what caused it, but you know he won't answer. They never do. You move on. At the edge of the square, a small group has gathered to read the town notice board, a new list of names. Not condemned, not yet, just under suspicion. Theft, heresy, insulting a noble. One name you recognize. He sold you apples last week. You wonder if he knew, even then, what was coming. The others read the notice with wide eyes and quiet mouths. A woman mutters a prayer. A man nods slowly, as if justice were a wine to be sipped and savored. No one sees you approach, but when they do, the air shifts. They part instinctively, making room for you to pass. Not with respect, but like people yielding to a dead animal in the road. Not out of fear, out of habit. You read the list, then keep walking. You won't be needed yet, but maybe tomorrow, maybe soon. Back in your corner of the square, a boy is polishing the railings of a stall. His mother stands nearby selling onions. She sees you first. Her eyes widen. Her hand gently touches the boy's shoulder. He looks up. You nod, politely. The mother pulls him close, whispering something fast and quiet. He doesn't look away. He just stares. You wonder what he sees. Not a man, surely. Not really. Something between a butcher and a shadow. Something his mother won't explain until he's older, if at all. You move along, pretending not to hear her say, "Don't look." Pretending not to feel the heat of that look. Pretending, as always, that you don't care, that you don't feel anything at all, that you were born this way. But you weren't. You remember laughing once, in the summer, cherries, a dog with crooked legs, your sister chasing bees in the orchard, before the rope, before the title, before they taught you how to disappear while standing right in front of them. Now, even your reflection avoids you. You pass the fountain, catch your face in the water. It blurs, refuses to hold its shape. Maybe that's for the best. It always begins the same way. The heavy iron door groaning open, the scrape of your boots on stone, the breath of cool rot that rises from the prison floor like something alive. They never expect it to be you. The condemned look up, anticipating a priest or a jailer. or a hooded figure with a scowl, but instead, there you are, just a man in worn boots, carrying a bucket of water, a stale heel of bread, and a silence that stretches across the stone like a second shadow. You don't speak first, you never do. Sometimes they glare, sometimes they beg, sometimes they try to pretend you're not real, like if they don't look, maybe you'll vanish. But you always wait, quiet, still. You place the bucket by the wall, the bread just far enough for them to reach without having to crawl. You set things gently, like you're afraid to wake them from a bad dream. Eventually, they talk. They always do. You've heard last words delivered 2 days early. You've heard confessions of crimes they didn't commit, just in case heaven is listening. You've heard lullabies, love letters, riddles, and laughter that phrase at the edges, the kind that sounds like it might break into weeping at any moment. Yesterday, it was a merchant's son, accused of selling watered wine to a noble. They say it's treason, he muttered, chewing the bread slowly. I say it's economics. He asked if you'd ever tasted plum wine. You hadn't. He laughed, genuinely, and offered to describe it. You let him. You even smiled. There's a strange intimacy in these moments. You, the silent witness. Them, unraveling at the seams. No guards are present. No scribes. It's not official. You're not here to extract anything. You're here to make sure they're still human when the time comes. A man once asked if he could sing during the walk. You nodded. He sang the whole way to the scaffold. A love song. You hummed it for days after, until you realized what you were doing and made yourself stop. You've held hands with some. Others tried to bite you. One spat in your eye and called you the devil's errand boy. You didn't argue. You never do. It's not about forgiveness. It's about proximity. You're the closest thing they'll have to kindness before the end. You know the timing. You know how many steps it is from the cell to the platform. You know where the stone dips, where a foot might stumble, where the air gets colder because the wind squeezes through the alley in a certain way. Sometimes they ask you questions. Is it true your blade is silver? It isn't. Will it hurt? Probably. Will you remember me? You want to say yes, but the truth is harder. Some you remember clearly, the way they smelled, the rhythm of their voice, a scar on the chin, the way they gripped the bars, like they were holding on to the world itself. Others blur. Time rubs them out, not out of cruelty, just erosion. One woman asked you to write a letter to her son. She didn't know how to write. You didn't either. Not properly. But you knew your letters well enough to trace the words. She whispered. You never learned if he received it. You fold your legs beneath you and sit against the opposite wall of the cell. You don't say anything. The man inside looks at you warily. He's young, maybe younger than you were when you started. He shifts, clears his throat. Do you like this job? He asks. You tilt your head, think for a moment. Then you say, quietly, gently, it's not really a job. He doesn't ask what you mean. He doesn't need to. You both sit in silence for a while. The drip of water from the ceiling, the only sound between you. Outside, you hear bells. Time's catching up again. Soon, the door will creak open. The guards will arrive. and the man in front of you will become part of the city's memory, feared, pitied, or forgotten. But for now, you just sit with him, not as a messenger of death, not as the rope binder or the blood scrubber, just another man, one whose silence might be the last kindness he receives. No one sees you clean it. That's the point. By the time the town wakes, the square must be spotless. No blood, no splinters, no echoes of the night before. If someone slips on the stone and sees a red smear in the morning light, it means you've failed. And you don't fail. You arrive in the dark, well before the bakers light their ovens or the priests open their doors. The platform still smells of heat and sweat, as if the wood remembers the final breath. You can feel it through your boots. The warmth lingers, even after the body is gone. You carry your usual kit: vinegar, sand, rags, coarse salt, 2 stiff brushes, and a dull-bladed scraper. There's a rhythm to this work, a choreography you've perfected. Kneel, scrub, pour, wipe, scrape, repeat. Your movements are slow and deliberate, not to prolong the task, but because haste makes streaks. Streaks make questions. Questions make problems. The first stain is always the hardest. It's never fully dry. Blood has a way of settling into cracks, creeping beneath nails in the wood. You use vinegar first, dabbing the rag until it's soaked and stinging your hands. Then sand, ground down from the quarry east of town. It scours gently, biting into the fibers like tiny teeth. You hum as you work. Not a song, just a sound, low, repetitive. It helps with the silence, helps with the thoughts. Sometimes you find things left behind. Today, it's a tooth. Small, white, still warm. You place it in the burlap pouch tied to your belt. You'll bury it later, quietly, under the old elm near the mill. You've done that before. Teeth, a ring, once a child's ribbon. It's not part of your job, technically, but no one else will do it. And you can't bear the thought of someone finding these pieces by accident, of a child asking why the square has a button soaked in brown. You move to the edge of the scaffold, kneeling by the post where the ropes were fastened. The grooves there are deeper, carved not just by knots, but by time and repetition and struggle. Some of them bleed sap now. The wood tries to heal. You pour vinegar again. Scrub. The air smells sharp, medicinal. Your fingers burn, raw from yesterday's work. You'll need to soak them in honey tonight, if you can find any. If the merchant still allows you near his stall, a bird lands on the corner beam, a small thrush, puffed against the cold. It watches you for a moment, tilting its head. Then it flies away. You envy it a little. No past, no weight, just wind and instinct. By the time the sun begins to peak above the eastern wall, the square is nearly clean. Not perfect, never perfect, but enough. The stains are gone. The smell is faint. The story has been erased. Almost. You pour the last of the vinegar into the gutter and rinse your hands in what's left of the clean water. The chill bites to the bone. You don't flinch. You never do. You fold your rags, repack your brushes, and take one final look at the platform. It looks like any other structure now. Just wood. Just ropes. Just tools, nothing to see. That's the goal. You sit for a moment on the stone bench by the alley. Your legs ache. Your back feels like it's been twisted by a winch. But you breathe evenly. Work done well feels like a kind of prayer. Not the holy kind, but the quiet kind. Across the square, you see the baker opening his shutters. He doesn't notice you, or maybe he pretends not to. Either way, he lights his fire and begins the day, never knowing how close he came to seeing what the night left behind. You rise slowly, joints cracking like old hinges, and disappear into the same shadows you came from. The square is ready. The town will never know, and that means you did your job. There's no ceremony, no scroll sealed with wax, no royal messenger with a velvet pouch, no handwritten note of thanks signed in ornate Latin. Just a man in a gray doublet, always the same man, waiting near the baker's alley on the second morning after a job. He never speaks. You walk past him as if by accident. He scratches his beard, spits to the side, and drops a coin pouch just behind the barrel of spoiled apples. You don't pick it up right away. That would be too eager, too visible. You wait until he's rounded the corner, vanished like mist into the side streets of Avignon. Then, and only then, you collect it. You never count the coins in public. It's rude, dangerous even. You wait until you're alone, usually in the narrow loft above the abandoned tannery, where you sleep some nights when the priest's quarters are too cold or too condemning. There, in the dim light from the cracked slats in the roof, you spill the pouch onto the floor, always silver, never gold. Gold would raise questions. You run your thumb across each coin, feeling for irregularities, the worn edges, the faint notches. Some are foreign, Aragonese, Neapolitan, once even a Venetian florin, evidence that your work has crossed borders. Even if you haven't, it's not much, this payment. Enough for food, cloth, a quiet life far from the town square. You could save it, perhaps, for an escape, for a cottage in the hills, for a boat out of Marseille. But you don't, because deep down, you know, there's no out. You are what you are, and the world, small and cruel as it is, has no place for a man who's handled too much rope. Sometimes you wonder where the other assistants go when they vanish. Some say they change names and start over in other cities. Others say they disappear in the middle of the night, the guilt finally dragging them under. Your uncle used to joke that the crown keeps a ledger of your sins, and when the numbers get too high, they send someone without a pouch. You never laughed at that. Still, the silver keeps coming. Quiet, steady, cold. It always smells faintly of vinegar and leather when you open the pouch, as if the man in the gray doublet stores them in a box beside old boots. You like that detail. It makes it feel human, mundane, not like blood money. You keep the pouches in a wooden chest hidden beneath the floorboards of your second lodging. You've carved a tiny symbol into the inside of the lid, a crude circle with a line through it. It means nothing, or maybe everything. You never told anyone about it. A few weeks ago, a girl was executed for theft. The town was buzzing, not because of the crime, but because she was beautiful. Blonde hair, clear skin, a laugh that lingered in the square like perfume. They said she stole bread, but others whispered that a nobleman's hand had been involved, and not just in accusation. Afterward, the man in the gray doublet handed you the pouch as usual, but this time it was heavier. You didn't ask why. You never ask why. Once, you dared to meet his eyes. They were gray like river stones, rimmed with fatigue, unreadable. He didn't blink, just tilted his head, like a bird watching something that might be food or might be threat. You never did that again. Sometimes, at night, you lie awake and imagine a world where your work earns a public salary, where your tools are cataloged, your hours tracked, your name listed on a parchment ledger next to master of rope or urban cleanser. You imagine receiving a winter coat from the city, boots lined with fur, a ration of wine, and then you laugh, softly, bitterly, because you know better. The crown rewards you the way it rewards any necessary horror, quietly, distantly, with silver and silence. No titles, no thanks, just enough to keep your mouth shut and your hands busy. Still, you hold the pouch tightly some nights, as if the weight of those coins is the only thing anchoring you to the earth, and maybe it is. It's not always about justice. Sometimes it's about performance. You know the difference. You can feel it in the way the townspeople gather, tight around the scaffold, faces flushed not with fear, but anticipation. There's a tension in the air, sharp and crackling, like the moment before a lute string snaps. These aren't the quiet executions, where a thief is hanged before dawn, and only a priest and 2 guards bear witness. No, these are the events. Market day, festival, a noble's birthday even. They want blood, but more than that, they want theater. And you're the stagehand. You arrive early, as always. The ropes are already coiled, the blade sharpened too, a whisper. But today, you feel the difference in your hands. They move faster, not with urgency, but with precision, the kind of practiced movement that makes horror look elegant. You wipe the scaffold boards with extra vinegar, not just to clean, but for the smell. It sharpens the senses, keeps people alert. There's a reason coliseums always reeked of metal and sweat. A guard approaches. He hands you a folded scrap of parchment, today's script in its own way. It lists the name of the condemned, their crime, official and otherwise, and a note. Make it last. You nod without a word. The condemned man is already in his cell, gagged. That usually means something political. You try not to ask. Instead, you prepare the stage. A second rope, a wider noose. The crowd prefers a bit of a struggle. It stokes their sense of superiority. I would never end up like him, they whisper, as they press closer for a better view. You scatter sawdust on the scaffold, not too much, just enough to soak what's coming. Vendors begin to set up around the perimeter. Someone sells roasted chestnuts. Someone else offers honeyed figs. Children play beneath a merchant's cart. It's a carnival of controlled cruelty. And you, ironically, are the one keeping it civilized. The Carrasco, the hooded man, arrives an hour before noon. His robe is fresh, black, formal. Today he's more priest than butcher. He nods to you briefly. You nod back. You will not speak again until the work is done. It's all part of the show. As the hour draws near, the square swells with heat and noise. A juggler performs at the edge. A minstrel tunes a lute. Somewhere, a drunk man shouts the name of a noble he hates. You tighten the knots on the ropes. Check the trapdoor mechanism twice. You oil the hinges, even though no one will see. These things matter. Timing matters. The crowd must gasp exactly when the floor drops. A child climbs onto a barrel to get a better view. His mother doesn't stop him. Instead, she lifts him higher. Watch carefully, she whispers. This is what happens when you lie. You look away. You don't want to know if she's talking to the child or to herself. The guards bring the condemned out. He stumbles once. The crowd roars. You feel it in your ribs. That hunger, ancient and primal. They need this, not for law, but for balance. One life traded for the illusion of order. The Carrasco raises his hand. The crowd hushes, and you take your place behind the curtain of presence, just out of sight, but vital. You adjust the ropes. You hold the condemned steady. You nod at the right moment. The floor gives way. There's a sound, brief, sharp, then silence, then cheers. You step back into shadow. The Carrasco raises his arms, soaking in the applause, like a stage actor after the final act. He bows his head, dignified, solemn, symbolic. You wipe the sweat from your brow and start untying the rope. There's no clapping for you. There never is. You begin the cleanup quietly. Already, children are imitating the motion, pretending to pull levers, making choking noises with theatrical flair. A merchant laughs. He should take up acting, he says. No one laughs at your performance. And yet, without you, the show wouldn't run at all. You pack the tools. The pouch is heavier than usual, probably a bonus. Maybe the crowd was especially generous today. Maybe the mayor was impressed. Or maybe it's just payment for silence. You disappear again into the alleys, cloak drawn tight, heart hollowed by applause that was never meant for you. And behind you, in the center of the square, the crowd returns to its bread and fruit and gossip. The show is over. Until next time. Some days, you wonder what life would look like somewhere else. Not in Avignon. Not in any town with gallows and cobblestone squares. Somewhere quieter, gentler. A fishing village, maybe, where people know more about tides than laws. You've tried to imagine it. You picture a cottage near a bend in the river, with herbs hanging from the ceiling and bread cooling on the windowsill. Your hands are calloused not from rope and steel, but from chopping wood, pulling weeds, catching trout. No one whispers when you pass. No one hides their children. You smile at the woman from the olive press, and she smiles back, unafraid. You go to the market, and they touch your coins without blinking. But even in your daydreams, it never lasts, because you don't really believe in that life. Not anymore. You've tried to leave the city. Once, years ago, packed a small sack, slipped out through the south gate before sunrise, walked 2 days on foot, sleeping in dry ditches, eating hard cheese and rye crust. You made it as far as a village called Saint Agrève. They didn't ask questions. At first, you found a barn to sleep in, offered to mend nets for a fisherman with shaky hands, even helped dig a fence line with a group of boys who never once looked at your face. It was almost peaceful until someone recognized your satchel. Not the whole thing, just a small brass button near the strap, identical to the ones issued to city-appointed assistants. Someone in the village had a cousin in Avignon, heard stories, put pieces together. The whispers came fast, the stares faster. The net mender stopped inviting you to dinner. The stable boy wouldn't walk past you without a cross sign etched in the dirt with his toe. By the third day, you were back on the road, not chased out, not threatened, just removed. The way fire removes air from a room. They made you disappear, and you let them. You told yourself it didn't matter, that you didn't belong in a place with flower baskets and wedding festivals, that your place was in the margins, in the places that don't get painted on maps. But sometimes, on nights when the scaffold creaks in the wind, long after the cleaning is done, you remember that village. The sound of frogs in the reeds, the way the lanterns glowed amber in the fog. How, for a moment, you felt like you were someone else, just a man with sore shoulders and an appetite for stew. You tried again later, not to escape, just to visit. You took the long road east and stopped in a town where no one knew your name, sat in the back corner of a tavern and drank weak cider while two men played dice. No one looked twice. The barkeep even smiled. But the first time someone spilled wine on the table and laughed about it, bleeding like a prisoner, you flinched. Not visibly, but enough. And you knew then. It was in you. Deep. A reflex in your bones. The job, the title, the silence. It had wrapped itself around your spine. You finished the drink, paid in full, left before dawn. Now, your world is smaller, safer in a way. You tend a tiny garden on the edge of town. Potatoes mostly. A few onions. Nothing that requires too much sun or too much hope. The soil is rocky, but forgiving. Some days you fish, not for food, for stillness. You don't even bait the hook. You just sit, line slack in the water, watching the current slip by like time. You read too, slowly, badly. Your uncle left a few books with broken spines and missing pages. You read them out loud in the evenings, not for meaning, but for the comfort of a voice. Sometimes, when the town is asleep and the square is clean, and the wind carries no scent of vinegar or blood, you close your eyes and picture the cottage again, the olives, the river, the woman who smiles without fear, and for a few heartbeats, you believe, just long enough to remember you're still human, just long enough to dream. You're not the only one. There are others, scattered across cities and towns, tucked behind churches and scaffolds, beneath the cloak of official silence. You don't know all their names. In most cases, you don't even know their faces, but you know their handwriting. A small network, quiet as a grave and just as old, exists among assistants like you. You leave notes in hidden spots, under loose stones near the cathedral, inside cracked well posts, tucked into the seams of scaffold, beams when you travel. Sometimes the notes are returned with new handwriting, new ink, new stains. You've never spoken aloud to any of them, but the conversations are real. The letters are usually short, never signed, never sent directly, just scraps exchanged hand to hand or by the occasional stable boy who doesn't ask questions for the right price. Topics vary. A man from Lyon once wrote you a detailed recipe for a vinegar soap mixture that removed bloodstains from wool. He even drew a diagram for the folding technique he used on his cloths. The note smelled faintly of bay leaves. A woman from Rouen, at least you assume she was a woman, described how she'd built a secret compartment into her tool chest to hide personal items. A locket, a scrap of music, a pressed flower. Sometimes you need to carry something lovely, she wrote. Even in this line of work, another note, written in cramped, anxious script, asked, "Do your dreams smell like iron?" You didn't answer that one, but you kept it. Some letters are morbidly funny. Tales of a rope snapping mid-performance, of a pigeon landing on a condemned man's head just before the drop, of a Carrasco who sneezed during the final blessing, sending the crowd into a wave of startled laughter. You laugh when you read them, quietly, the kind of laugh that echoes strangely in an empty room. Once you received a drawing, just a sketch on parchment, of an assistant's satchel, but instead of tools, it held absurd things. A lute, a flower crown, a roasted goose. A note scribbled beneath said, "This is what they think we carry." You pinned it to the underside of your bed slat. Some notes are darker. One assistant claimed he'd begun hearing the condemned whisper his name before he entered the room. Another said her hands shook every time she touched rope, even outside work. "I can't tie my apron anymore," she wrote. "My sister thinks I've grown lazy." You wanted to write back, "You're not lazy, you're just full," but you didn't, because words can only carry so much. You wonder what they'd think of you, your habits, the way you hum while cleaning, the way you bury found teeth beneath the elm tree. Would they think you strange, or simply familiar? One note, smuggled in from Toulouse, listed the names of assistants who had vanished, not retired, not replaced, just gone. It ended with the question, "How will we know when it's our turn?" You folded that one carefully and burned it. You don't need answers to that question. Sometimes, when you're alone in the square after dark, you imagine all the others standing with you, not ghosts, not spirits, just men and women in worn boots, cloaks damp with morning dew, satchels slung over shoulders like yours. You imagine them nodding silently, acknowledging the work, not judging, not forgiving, just seeing you. And for a moment, the job feels less solitary, like you're part of something, not a brotherhood, not exactly, but a quiet lineage, a chain of hands that carry the same weight, a network of shadows moving just outside the glow of history's torchlight. You go back inside, take out your quill, and begin a new note. To no one, to everyone, just a line. "Today, the blood came off easily. That worries me more than when it doesn't." You tuck it into your coat. You'll find a place to leave it tomorrow. Someone will find it, and maybe they'll understand. You're not afraid of death. That part fades early. After the third or fourth body, the nerves dull. The sweat still comes, but the shaking stops. You learn that death has a rhythm, a scent, a texture. it becomes familiar. But there are other fears, quieter ones, that linger long after the crowds disperse, like the fear of forgetting someone's face, not someone you loved, but someone you tied, someone who whispered their child's name to you while the rope tightened, someone whose hand trembled when you offered water. You try to hold on to their features, their voices, their final words, but eventually they blend, and the fear sets in, not of what you did, but of how little you remember doing it. There's the fear of not feeling anything, of becoming so practiced, so clean, so automatic, that one day you finish an execution and realize you were thinking about onions, that the thing you once found monstrous now fits into your schedule like any other task. You fear the crowd too, not their anger, but their joy, their applause, the way their eyes light up during a good clean drop, or how they lean in when the condemned fights the rope. You see something in their expressions that makes your skin crawl. Not cruelty, but hunger. A hunger you serve. You fear your own dreams. They rarely show the moment of death. No, they linger before and after. The dragging of feet, the way rope rubs against bare skin, the silence that follows a final gasp. The dreams are not bloody. They are quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. Last week, you woke up thinking you'd left a body behind. You ran to the square in the middle of the night, breath fogging in the air, only to find it empty, clean, as it should be. But your hands shook for hours after. You never told anyone. Who would you tell? The priest avoids your gaze. The guards speak to you only when they must. The baker sends his son to take your coins, and the boy keeps them in a separate pouch from the others. You're surrounded by people, but alone in a very specific way, like a rock in the middle of a stream, water touching you constantly, but never holding you. You fear illness, not because of death, but because you know if you fall sick, no one will care for you. There's no mother to change your cloth, no friend to sit beside your bed. You will sweat alone, shiver alone, and either rise or not. And if not, someone else will scrub the blood from the stones where you once worked. You fear growing old, because what happens then? There's no pension for men like you, no quiet retirement with a vineyard and grandchildren. When your back bends too far, when your hands lose their grip, when your sight fails and you miss a knot, what then? You've heard stories. One assistant, years ago, tried to stay on too long, dropped the blade before the signal. The condemned survived. A riot followed. The assistant disappeared. Some say the town buried him under the scaffold, not out of malice, just efficiency. You fear losing your hands, not literally, just losing the feel of them. They've become so conditioned, so measured in pressure and pace, that you wonder if they belong to you anymore. When you touch your own face, it feels like someone else is doing it. You once flinched when a child brushed against you in the market. The contact was small, accidental, but your whole body went stiff. The child didn't even notice, but you did. You still do. And yes, you fear ghosts. Not the ones in sheets or stories, but the kind that sit in the corner of your room when the fire goes out, the kind that breathe behind your ear when you're trying to fall asleep. The kind that don't speak, but don't let you forget. You tell yourself they're just memories, echoes, tricks of the mind, but you check the corners anyway, every night, just in case, because there's one final fear, the deepest one, the one you never say out loud. What if, after all this time, after all the silence and blood and practiced indifference, you've become exactly what they think you are? The bell tolls from the cathedral spire. 7 chimes. Evening. The square is quiet now, swept and salted. Lanterns lit in neat rows. From behind the chapel, where you sit in the shadow of the vestry wall, you hear the unmistakable sounds of merriment drifting in from the mayor's hall. Laughter, forks on pewter, the light clatter of wine goblets and wooden heels on stone. A feast. There's always a feast after a public execution. Not officially, of course. No decree declares it. But it happens. Bread is broken. Meat is carved. Musicians are paid extra to play lively tunes that chase away the weight of what the town has just witnessed. You've never been invited. You never will be. Even the guards, the same ones who bring you condemned men, who pass you notes and pouches and keys, get to sit at the table, loosen their belts, and drink themselves into forgetfulness. You, meanwhile, peel dirt from under your nails and eat cold lentils from a tin bowl, alone. One time, years ago, you tried to go. You didn't dress for it. How could you? You simply showed up, clean, quiet, holding a loaf of bread you'd bought with your own silver, as if that might buy you a seat. You stood just outside the hall, where music leaked through the heavy doors, like honey through a crack. Inside, someone raised a toast. You caught the words justice, order, and peace. And then, laughter. You stood there for a while, not knocking, not speaking. Eventually, someone opened the door to throw out a bucket of bones and wine dregs. He looked at you, just a glance, and then shut it again. Nothing said, but the message was clear. You didn't go back. You've been absent from every wedding, every christening, every burial. Even those few people who once called you family no longer write. A cousin married last spring. You heard about it from a note scribbled in the margin of someone else's letter. They celebrated in the valley. You weren't mentioned. Sometimes, when you're passing through the market and catch the scent of roasted garlic and spiced wine, you pause, not for the food, but the feeling, that warmth that wraps itself around gatherings, the comfort of shared noise, the light. You never step inside, not even to listen, because you know how it goes. They drink, they dance, and then someone brings up you, not by name, just a passing mention, a joke, a shiver. Did you see the assistant today? I think he lives in the old tannery. No, I heard he sleeps in the crypt. Wouldn't it be something if he showed up here right now? Laughter, not cruel necessarily, but enough to sting, enough to remind them they're not you. And that reminder, that's part of the feast too. You once received a token from a little girl, a flower carefully braided into a ring. She must not have known who you were. Or maybe she did, and didn't yet understand. You kept it in your satchel for weeks, until it dried out and crumbled in your hands one morning while preparing rope. You didn't cry, but your fingers shook for hours. Sometimes you tell yourself it doesn't matter. That solitude is cleaner, quieter. That joy, like wine, goes sour eventually. That feasts are full of masks and gluttony and sweat. But then the music starts again. A fiddle, a drum, voices in unison. And for a moment, your heart aches in a way you don't quite understand, like it's reaching for a table that was never set for you. You pour water over your hands, rub them dry on your cloak. The sound of laughter carries down the alley like smoke. You walk away, not bitter, just empty. The bell tolls from the cathedral spire. 7 chimes. Evening. The square is quiet now, swept and salted. Lanterns lit in neat rows. From behind the chapel, where you sit in the shadow of the vestry wall, you hear the unmistakable sounds of merriment drifting in from the mayor's hall. Laughter, forks on pewter, the light clatter of wine goblets and wooden heels on stone. A feast. There's always a feast after a public execution. Not officially, of course. No decree declares it. But it happens. Bread is broken. Meat is carved. Musicians are paid extra to play lively tunes that chase away the weight of what the town has just witnessed. You've never been invited. You never will be. Even the guards, the same ones who bring you condemned men, who pass you notes and pouches and keys, get to sit at the table, loosen their belts, and drink themselves into forgetfulness. You, meanwhile, peel dirt from under your nails and eat cold lentils from a tin bowl, alone. One time, years ago, you tried to go. You didn't dress for it. How could you? You simply showed up, clean, quiet, holding a loaf of bread you'd bought with your own silver, as if that might buy you a seat. You stood just outside the hall, where music leaked through the heavy doors like honey through a crack. Inside, someone raised a toast. You caught the words justice, order, and peace. And then, laughter. You stood there for a while, not knocking, not speaking. Eventually, someone opened the door to throw out a bucket of bones and wine dregs. He looked at you, just a glance, and then shut it again. Nothing said, but the message was clear. You didn't go back. You've been absent from every wedding, every christening, every burial. Even those few people who once called you family no longer write. A cousin married last spring. You heard about it from a note scribbled in the margin of someone else's letter. They celebrated in the valley. You weren't mentioned. Sometimes, when you're passing through the market and catch the scent of roasted garlic and spiced wine, you pause, not for the food, but the feeling, that warmth that wraps itself around gatherings, the comfort of shared noise, the light. You never step inside, not even to listen, because you know how it goes. They drink, they dance, and then someone brings up you, not by name, just a passing mention, a joke, a shiver. Did you see the assistant today? I think he lives in the old tannery. No, I heard he sleeps in the crypt. Wouldn't it be something if he showed up here right now? Laughter, not cruel necessarily, but enough to sting, enough to remind them they're not you. And that reminder, that's part of the feast too. You once received a token from a little girl, a flower carefully braided into a ring. She must not have known who you were, or maybe she did. and didn't yet understand, you kept it in your satchel for weeks until it dried out and crumbled in your hands one morning while preparing rope. You didn't cry, but your fingers shook for hours. Sometimes you tell yourself it doesn't matter. That solitude is cleaner, quieter. That joy, like wine, goes sour eventually. That feasts are full of masks and gluttony and sweat. But then the music starts again. A fiddle, a drum, voices in unison, and for a moment, your heart aches in a way you don't quite understand, like it's reaching for a table that was never set for you. You pour water over your hands, rub them dry on your cloak. The sound of laughter carries down the alley like smoke. You walk away, not bitter, just empty. It begins with a cough, not yours, his, your father's. It's subtle at first, a scratch in the throat, a bit of phlegm after the morning bread. He jokes about it, says the dust from the rope fibers is to blame, that the vinegar's finally burned his lungs after all these years. You laugh, lightly, but the cough doesn't stop. It deepens, stays longer, echoes in the corners of your shared room, like something trying to escape. He gets slower, too, ties his knots twice, sharpens the blade 3 times. His hands fumble with the smaller tasks. He's not old, not really, but the weight of years is measured differently in your line of work. It shows in the eyes. When he misses a loop on the gallows frame one morning, he sits down on the steps and stares into the sky like he's forgotten where he is. You don't speak. You just kneel beside him and tighten the knot yourself. That night, he doesn't eat, just wraps himself in his wool cloak and sleeps sitting up. 3 days later, he doesn't rise at all. The town doesn't ask. There's no priest, no ceremony, no procession. Not for people like you. No one brings flowers or candles or loaves of bread. No bells toll, just silence. You carry him out of the city under the cover of dusk, wrapped in the same linen he used to clean the scaffold. You dig the hole yourself, under the old elm, the one where you bury the lost teeth and broken buttons from the condemned. You don't cry, not because you're strong, because it's too quiet. You mark the grave with a stone, nothing carved, just placed, heavy enough not to blow away. You sit with it for a while, talk even, not loud, just enough to hear your own voice say his name. You hadn't said it in years. After the burial, you return to the chapel loft. His cloak still hangs on the nail. His boots still sit by the hearth, one slightly tilted inward from a worn sole. You touch them briefly, then look away. You find his satchel under the bed, smaller than yours, lighter. You open it carefully. Inside, everything is folded with impossible precision, blades oiled and wrapped, cloths laundered, the ropes coiled like sleeping snakes. At the very bottom, you find a scrap of paper folded 4 times. In his handwriting, "If I die first, burn this." There's nothing else written. You don't burn it. You keep it in your own satchel, tucked beside your linen cloth with the 3 red ink dots. You tell yourself it doesn't matter, that it's just a joke, a man's way of softening the inevitable. But it does matter, because when death comes for one of you, it's not dramatic. There's no scene, no last rites, no memory. It just happens. quietly, like the turning of a page no one reads aloud. The next morning, the guards arrive. One of them asks, "Where's the old man?" You reply, "Gone." He doesn't ask where or how, just nods and hands you a slip of parchment with another name, another crime, another date, and that's it. His name is gone from the rolls. The town already speaks of the new one, meaning you, though you've been there for years, as if he never existed, as if you emerged from the shadow fully formed, satchel in hand. You carry on, you clean, you tie, you wait. But some nights you hear that cough again, not in your throat, in the room, a breath that doesn't belong to you. You don't turn your head, you just whisper, "I know," and keep your hands steady